person anymore. It's really a treat to be able to do this. We're always in the boxes. So I want to welcome you all and welcome Magdalena. I was her primary supervisor on the dissertation. And I'm not going to say much more because she's going to talk. It's her turn to talk. But I just want to tell you what the structure is. Magdalena will talk for 20 minutes to half an hour. Yeah? And then after that, the three of us, this is the panel, the examination panel, will ask questions. And we'll begin with the person that's furthest away from the dissertation, which is Judith Alalou, who is what we call our EGS representative. And then the second reader, Jose Miguel, and then it will conclude with me. And then after that, we will go out and discuss what we've heard, and then discuss what designation the dissertation should get. By the time a person comes to this point, it's basically been accepted. But then this part is pending the presentation, it's accepted, and then the designation is sort of on top of that. So, and when we go out, will be a chance for all of you to ask questions, to make comments, to discuss. We'll probably be out for maybe 10 minutes, not that long. So that's it. Okay. So I'm going to take it away.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm probably going to walk around so you'll see my shadow a little bit back and forth. I'm Magdalena Karlik. I'm here with my two sons and my partner, and we have been traveling. We have been traveling long distances the last few weeks to get here, and I've traveled long distances personally and professionally to be here in this moment. So I'm feeling my feet on the ground, exhaling, and being present. I invite you all to do the same. So the title of my dissertation is Responsibility to the Group, Facilitation, Community Building, and Emergence in Therapeutic Arts Education. Can we take pictures? That's fine, as long as if you post anything, please tag me. And if you cite anything I talk about, please cite me. So of course I want to start with my gratitude. I'm grateful for this moment. I'm grateful for my ancestors. I'm grateful to the unknown, God, goddesses, great spirit, source, all the words, all the names. I'm grateful to all of you to be here. I'm grateful for my children and my partner. I'm grateful for my parents and my brother, my friends, my past, my present, and my future. And the earth, Savior. And I also want to say that, we stand here in this moment because of all of our ancestors. And so let's, support them in being in conversation. Right now, we're in conversation, and so are they. And may we all dance together in this moment. Okay. Well. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. No, it's this. Do you mind? Okay.
Yeah.
So instead, I decided to use the term therapeutic arts education as an umbrella to expressive arts therapy, dance movement therapy, music therapy, poetry therapy, art therapy, psychodramas, play therapy, sand tray, sand play. I don't know if I said drama, but I'll say drama again. So I'm looking at therapeutic arts education in all of these different disciplines. So I started at EGS in 2018. That was a long time ago for me and for the world as well. So many things have happened. And it started with really wondering about safety. I've been an educator for over a decade in therapeutic arts education, and specifically in art therapy, and really wondering about what is safety in this work as educators. What is our, and then really it moved towards what is our responsibility as educators. So again, why do some facilitators assume that what they provide is safe for the individuals in the group? Is safety an illusion? Is safety necessary to learn as an individual and collectively? And through the process here at EGS and CAGS, I realized that it's really more, it's so much bigger than safety. It's actually responsibility. What is my responsibility to you in this moment as a facilitator of this space? What's the responsibility to myself? And then this was birthed. So these are my research questions coming into this doctoral work. How does the facilitator's personal aesthetics, nervous system, and sociocultural background influence their agenda and facilitation of a course in therapeutic arts education? How do the expressive arts pedagogical concepts relate to ethics and aesthetics within the context of higher education? And what is the relationship between the curriculum frame and the third? So I did a lot. I did a lot. And the biggest piece is that I came from my point of view. I really did center my perspective to be able to figure out what all of the components of responsibility are. So I use an autoethnographic approach with arts-based research methods. And so this research methodology is really about figuring out who I am as the researcher. What are my viewpoints? What are my identities? How does that influence what it is that I'm looking at? And then can that be expanded to include other people's perspective? More about autoethnography. It frames how personal and cultural experience offer important reflections for the understanding of collective communal experiences. So while my perspective is rooted in my experience, I can also tap into the collective, which is a beautiful bridge. And then also, where are the lines, right? Where are the lines of like assumption and entitlement and assumed intimacy? So this is part of my ethnography. This is part of my perspective. Some of the things that make me me, that influence how I see or influence how I don't see, what I miss, what I focus on, different aspects of my identity that you can see. I think some of the biggest pieces are around cultural inheritance, physical experience, and the roles that I hold in my life. So in this autoethnography, I focused on the culture of graduate school. So that was the culture that I was entering into and swimming in. And there's so many different aspects of graduate school, and so many different responsibilities that we have as educators, administrators, and facilitators. Because there's this huge ripple effect that happens, right? As facilitators of this type of education, we are holding and nurturing folks who are then going to influence and support, hopefully protect, enable, help create, expand hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. So this role as an educator is fundamental to look at and not assume that we know what the fuck we're doing. So I'm just going to read this last part. This creative inquiry into concepts and questions related to this culture allowed for my expansive exploration in stages of data collection. It made room for diverse perspectives, inherited experiences, and reframing contexts. A little bit about arts-based research and artography. Artography really focuses similarly on these specific aspects of the researcher, as an artist, as teacher, and as researcher, and uses a multimodal decentering to explore whatever the research questions are. So as you'll see, I used a number of different creative modalities to explore all the different things that I was trying to get at. And what was so beautiful about an intermodal research process is all the different things that emerged. All the different concepts, I'm like, oh, why am I not thinking about that? Or all the different imagery or the repetition of symbols that moved throughout the art. So this is pared down the work that I did. The first part, stage one, I did my creative inquiry. I did journaling, sand tray, and paintings. I explored 19 different concepts, I think 15 or 16 of which I knew what I wanted to look at, and then a few of them emerged from the process. And through the data analysis, I looked at the repetition of shapes and symbols. I looked at through the expressive therapies continuum, the different ways that I use material, and then from all of this, I decided to create a podcast. Those were my interviews of a spectrum of therapeutic arts educators, and the questions emerged from the first stage. I analyzed the first part through blackout poetry, digital poems, and then created this. See? And the second part, I analyzed the video portion of the interviews through gestures. So just looking at the gestural communication between me and the interviewee themselves or myself. And as you may already see, I am incredibly gestural, which is probably why I was interested in looking at everybody's gestures. But there's a whole world in the way we communicate with our bodies, and that is so interesting to me. Okay, these are just a reminder, these were my research questions. So these are the 19 different concepts that I looked at, and they're all the way around the room as well. Some of them are falling down, and I am just not going over to fix them. The last four, consent, conflict, impact, and the third emerged from the process. Why am I not looking at consent? Oh my gosh, how could I not be looking at conflict? That's a huge part of facilitation. It's a huge part of group work and of education. Same thing with impact, right? That is why I'm looking at responsibility, because we have an impact. We have power. It's important to attend to what our impact is. And then the third. So I have some timelines in here. This is just looking at the way that this is the painting process timeline. I worked on all of these pieces from the beginning of 2022 till the beginning of 2023. And I did start with, we'll look at that next, I did start with a sand tray that explored the concept, and then a recycled canvas from somebody in my community, and then I just worked on a piece over time. So again, the concepts explored and what emerged from the painting process. And there's this cause and effect piece, right? What's happening, what's building, what emerges, and then figuring out what comes first, what comes second. Kind of, it's like it's a weaving. So these are all the images that you see around you. This page and then the next one. And there's a lot of repetition of symbol, of shape, of color, and of passion. So this is the sand tray timeline. I don't have sand trays for the last four, since the concepts emerged from the process, and actually I was using the sand tray collection at the graduate school that I was working at the time. I left that program, and so I didn't do sand trays for those few. But this is I worked on them again from the beginning of January to, the beginning of 2022 to September 2022. And we'll see, on the next slide, we'll see images of, the next two slides, images of all the trays together. A lot of repetition of stones, of holding, of protection, of earth, of different animals, movement. And some explosion, some collapse, but so much holding and exploration. So for all of the pieces that I did, the sand trays, the paintings, I journaled. So I voice recorded my journaling, I typed journaling, and from that, the way that I harvested meaning was through blackout poetry. So I put all of the journals together for each concept, printed them out, and then circled whatever stood out to me, and then blocked out the rest. And so when you look around here, you can see that each piece has a blackout poem next to it, and then the piece above is the poem harvested from that. And that's what you'll find in the zine. So the second way that I harvested from my audio journals was by creating a layered poem. And if you had heard this earlier, I'm going to play a little bit of it.
The third is God rising from the ocean. Feels like every underworld enters into life through this space. There's circles and mandalas. It's grounded spontaneity. Mandala is the vulva being open of the universe, of life, and it shapes and circles and it layers and layers of movement, boundaries of happening.
Pause that. So you can access that with this QR code. As you can see, there are a ton of QR codes. This is a labor of love. We have QR codes for process images for each painting. We have QR codes for the audio version of each blackout poem. And then when I get to it, we have some QR codes related to the gestural videos.
The third
Oh,
is
God again. It should. Yes. Okay. So this is just a little bit from the zine. It's like it's a way to hold it all, a way to hold all of the poetry and all the paintings together. And when I created this book, I just felt so proud of myself. All of these concepts are really dear to me. They impact how I think about my work as an educator and also my practice of being human in every moment, how to be with all of these pieces and to practice being my best self. Yeah. So the next piece, what emerged from this process, originally I thought I was going to do all these workshops, exploring all these concepts with all these educators. That's not what happened, because that would be crazy. In the best, I say that because I'm a little bit of I do a lot. I love, it just kept growing and growing, and I realized that doing workshops, I can do that another time, after I get this thing done. So I decided to create a podcast, interviewing educators, and this, I don't think I said this is all based in the United States. So this is all United States-based educators in therapeutic arts graduate school. So that is a really important context. Apologies. So the podcast is called Boundaries and Belonging, an arts-based approach. You can find it wherever you find a podcast. There are 2 seasons of it. And we have art therapists, dance movement therapists, drama therapists, and expressive arts therapists. So I wasn't able to, not all the disciplines are represented. But basically, I got lots of emails from the internet sent out an invitation, and who was interviewed answered the call. This is what I sent out. These are the questions that I sent out to all of these educators. Tell us about your teaching experience. How do you describe your teaching frame? Let's talk about the term gatekeeping. How do you facilitate belonging? What are your agendas? What art materials, responsibilities? How does heartache and heartbreak show up in your classrooms? How about humility? When does conflict and tension enter into the conversation? And share some examples of the third and flow and how it shows up in the group. So those were the things that I had distilled down that I was really interested in. So I have a couple of, so basically what I did was I created these, I did these interviews, and then I made a bunch of clips that I put on Instagram to advertise it. Am I pressing play? I think if you press the arrow, it'll probably press play.
When you're talking about defining music therapy, you gotta define music. You gotta define therapy. And to understand those things, you gotta understand.
This is so good, so we really want to hear it. All right, we're gonna be really quiet. Oh, shoot.
When you're talking about defining music therapy, you gotta define music. And you gotta define therapy. And to understand those things, you gotta understand what is health. And health is culturally situated, as is music. So what is culture? And where are you situated?
Dr. MVK Webb, she's a music therapist.
I have to use my power and privilege, as a white cis woman with power in the classroom, that I might not be able to change something right away, but I have more power to go to a faculty meeting or a faculty senate meeting and say, there's an issue here. Does anyone else experience this too? We need to say something about this, and not be afraid to do that.
So I'm looking at the time, and I'm gonna have to rush through this myself. So these are some of the demographic bits of the people that I interviewed. It's another one that's really good, but we're not gonna watch. If you go to my Instagram for this podcast, you can watch them. They're there. It's another one. So this is some information about the gestural harvesting from the interviews. We've got, so basically what I did, I'm gonna have to go through this a little quick. Basically what I did was I created a few different gestural montages from the interviews. I cut up the interviews by gesture, I organized them by type of movement, and then I pulled them together to create meaning. And created a few, I'm gonna just do it, pieces from it. I'm gonna share this one, I guess. Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm gonna share it. Is it up there? See if I can get right on there. No? No, okay.
The bones are a little more upright and functional by that point in life.
Being able to get up again.
All of the threads.
Oh, mind is being blown.
I was floored.
You're disrupting.
Reliving and remembering.
Really easy to just get up here.
Okay, let's distill it. Let's bring it down.
You're gonna play out all kinds of stuff.
How are you wrestling with this stuff?
The personal and the therapist intersect.
Figuring out where that boundary is.
So how about we try to get to what's lying underneath?
This place of seeing self
Dumping everything.
Being the center of your family.
flooding, or shutting down.
Feeling those pushes and pulls and this exercising of the psyche.
It unveils a completely new world.
Ground yourself.
Frame.
When I think of a gate,
What is a therapist? What is a teacher? And what is the overlap between the two?
The space between it gets so small.
Almost like walking on the fence.
My own
So
privilege.
I'm gonna pause it just because of time, but I do wanna show you this one, and then I'm gonna talk about my findings. Because this is so fun. This is it's very short, it's a doubling. There we go.
I'm gonna take the reins.
Moving and just kind of like, let's just move that shit out. Yeah.
And if there's individually, it's not mine. It's just like
Yes.
this, whatever this is.
Self-regulating.
As the teacher, I'm just like, and goodbye.
Too hot.
So I showed it in a couple of different ways, with sound, without sound, and without sound, and with the words. Separately and together. Okay, I'm gonna pause this one.
I'm gonna.
Okay. So, what's so clear about being an educator in therapeutic arts is that we are performers, we are dancers, we are channels, we are sculptors, and we have an ethical practice to really attend to in terms of our aesthetic responsibility to the work, to the emergence, to the beauty, to the creativity, to the growth, as well as to the fields. And our fields, depending on what country we live in, have different frames, or don't necessarily have a frame. But from where I live in the United States, there are very clear frames, or there are lots of words that hold our frames that are important to attend to. And I think that there's this piece of this weaving, just like calming down. All of these thanks, Judah. All of these concepts weave together to speak to what our responsibilities are as educators. So I created this diagram with all the different concepts and how they overlap. So if we think about like the relationship between safety and trust, it's that mandorla shape again. The relationship between trust and discomfort, between discomfort and fear, fear and conflict, conflict and heartache, and on and on and on. So I'm also gonna have to rush through this as well.
Don't rush.
Okay,
It's
I won't rush. It's okay if we go further than.
If you take 5 minutes more.
These are some of the things that I focused on in my writing that I found important to being a facilitator in therapeutic arts. So, can we go to the next slide? How to use decentering as an educator. What the choices that we make as educators around what we put in the center, what we take out of the center, whose voices we center, whose voices we forget about, how we use the process, the creative process, to come back to what's important. And how to use it as a technique to de-escalate, reframe, and refocus. Aesthetic feedback. This is such an important part of being a therapeutic arts educator because we're using the arts, we are supporting our students to use the arts to communicate, to explore, and to express. So the way that we offer creative and aesthetic feedback to the folks that we're supporting to become therapists, to become facilitators, to become educators has an impact, and it's important for us to be in touch with. Similarly, the use of aesthetic analysis, how we do or don't use reductionistic attitudes, right? How we support the group to stay on the surface, to see the complexity rather than to identify and to box in. It's an I think it's an important facilitation technique as an educator. And then our responsibility to the space, our responsibility to the curriculum, our responsibility to the beauty, the emergence, the possibility, the newness, the growth, and how we attend to that, how we facilitate it. And I think that one of the things that I've learned over time, both in the complexity of how I tend to move and facilitate, is that, you know, how we bring simplicity into the work that we facilitate with groups is important, so that folks can expand their play range, so that things don't require high skill, so that there can be the experience of satisfaction and growth as students. Okay, this is the last part. What emerged for me is the importance, so this is important, and it's lacking. This is what's lacking in our fields. Community building for faculty and sustainable workplace practices. Faculty training. At least in the United States, there is no requirement, not a requirement in the therapeutic arts education for faculty training. You have to have a license, and as an art therapist, you have to be board certified nationally, but that's it. Counselor education, there are definitely requirements, but I'm not going to get into that right now. What I harvested from this process are all the different things that are important for us as educators to attend to be trained in, to think about, to be challenged on, from applied cultural humility, decentering coloniality and whiteness, the power dynamics in the classroom, how we assess, who we assess, why we assess, faculty plagiarism of student work, gatekeeping practices, decolonizing teaching practices, time, grades, expectations, oral versus written work, conflict and group dynamics, because how many of you have had a teacher who does not know how to handle conflict and just avoids that shit? Not cool. Inclusive and accessible curriculum, classrooms and teaching methods, navigating the line between accommodation and enabling. If there's a really hard thing for educators, like how much do I push? What do you need? What am I enabling? Oh my God, are you a professional? Right? It's really, it's quite a line to navigate, and it's important for us to talk about. Misappropriation of cultural practices in therapeutic arts, from the mandala to kintsugi to dream catchers, etc. How cultural practices are used as an art directive, separated from the culture, from the spirituality, from the land. These things need to be talked about. And who's facilitating it, right? How to facilitate emergence of creativity and beauty through conflict and growth. And then recognizing impairment in self and colleagues. When is it time to pause? When is it time to stop? And the last thing I didn't talk about at all, but I did talk about in my dissertation, is expanding expressive therapies continuum to all the different disciplines of therapeutic arts. This is just a plug. I was published this year in 2 different books. Comic scenes and graphic novels in art therapy and queer worldview in art therapy. I co-wrote an article, so you may want to look at these books. They're excellent. Not just because I'm in them, although I do like my chapters. This is my thought. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. You may sit down. Yeah. Why don't you sit, can you sit up here? Sure.
take this chair.
Yes. Okay, so now it's our turn. Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna start with Judith.
Okay. Thank you, Magdalena. Wow, so much here. I have 2 pages of questions, but I will focus into. Okay. No, the first word that appeared tonight is responsibility, and you are talking a lot about this responsibility, and I appreciate a lot that we have a lot, to look, and to put attention in, of course. But I am thinking also in the opposite, you say? Yeah. How you conceive the other side of the educator, like it's all about our responsibility, because if not, I will start to feel a little, you understand my question? Like,
Yeah. How do we balance it?
How to balance this, like, yes, we have responsibility, of course, and thank you to really point in all these themes, like it's very important to acknowledge. But in the other side, like as the therapist, in a way, like we are responsible of,
where
but also we are maybe not responsible of blah 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 blah. So what do you think?
I mean, I think that's the complexity of it, right? I think that we're responsible to ourselves. We're responsible to the earth. I think that there's this trust of practice every moment around like what's happening now. Where was I? Oh, here I am again. What's happening now? I think that responsibility isn't necessarily like I need to take care of all of these things, otherwise I've messed up. It's more like I'm walking, I'm practicing, I'm moving towards, and I'm discerning. What are my boundaries as an educator? I think it's similar to what I was saying about the line between accommodation and enabling, right? How do we figure out like what are the needs here in all of these relationships? Because that's really what all of this is. It's relationship. And I'm going to mess up, and I have messed up many times all over the place, and then I come back. Or then I practice coming back, or I didn't come back and I fucking change, or I do something different next time, right? But I think it's this, I think that's also where the play is. I think there is play in responsibility.
I love the word relation, It's like everything is in relation at the end, like it's a co-creation.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the emergence.
Yeah. Okay, so I start feeling more relaxed. And I love your paintings. Amazing. There's so much here, and coming from your autoethnography method. And can you tell us more about your process of painting?
Sure.
How was it, and how you came into these themes, and what really touched you, in all these moments of being in your paintings.
Thanks for that question. I think this definitely was one of my favorite parts. I spent all different types of time on all of the paintings. There's one painting that I spent like an hour on, and a few other paintings that I spent months and months and months on. They all started with a recycled canvas, so I just asked for recycled canvases in my community, and then just chose and went. I'd work on them from anywhere from 5 minutes to 3 hours at a time, and they ranged in how I did them. So there's a lot of layering. Some of them there's like scratching, some I cut pieces out and sewed. So like, and really the most like, the ones that like have the most, I don't know what the word is, this is the movement, are fear, conflict, and impact. Those ones were cut and sewn, and they are so powerful. I love them, and discomfort too. Those are the ones I love the most, which is so interesting because the concepts are a bit tumultuous. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Magdalena. Really, really very important work, and I really like how you did it. You were talking with. We had a lecture some days ago with Richard Weinreich, and he was talking about the art-based research method, and this is a great example, of how you really dive into it, and all this is coming out, really nice. Yeah, maybe I have very specific questions. Why did you choose only the gestures? What about the content of the conversations?
Well, great question. I think that I knew that I wanted to learn from the gestures. What I wanted to find out, like, if there were relationships across the interviews between like concepts or words and the movement. And I found sometimes yes, sometimes no. And if you watch some of the videos, you'll see that like there are these shared movements that have some relationship to them. And then there's a shared movement that doesn't. And I guess I wanted to learn more about that, and what I learned is that I know nothing. That's kind of what I learned from the process, because there's so much to look at. And I guess I felt like the gestures were content, but I wanted to find out what the content was from the gestures, if that makes sense. And then with the relationship between the content and the gestures, and then the gestures and all of the people, and myself. One thing that I did not look at is that I don't know what gestures are related to me, right? So like when I cut out the gestures, I'm not sure how many of them mimic what the relationship between me and the interviewee were. That I wasn't looking for that. So if I were to do it again, I would do that. But
yeah. And going more into the method, what do you think are the limits of this method?
The limits
of your methodology, the way you research.
Time. I think time and life are the limits, because you can just keep going. If I'm centering like my perspective, and then the way that I can tune into the collective, I don't think that can ever end, except when time or life ends, or when I choose to stop. I think that's probably the biggest limit, is setting a limit. And that's really such a great learning. How do I set limits? And that's like the practice.
Yeah, and you were something that I really find interesting that you didn't mention in your presentation is this. You compare, like you were starting with this idea of a safe space, but then you arrived to, what was the word? It was not safe space, no?
Courageous space.
Courageous space. I really like that. Do you want to say more about that?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's not. So the facilitator doesn't have to create a safe space. It's about creating a courageous space.
Yes,
That's
which is
really.
Really.
You haven't heard that before?
It's really better for. It's better for. I think that it's like a good way to deepen the process, because it does take some of the weight and the responsibility off of the facilitator. And it's not mine. This is not from me. This is like, this is deeply rooted in activist work, that supporting decolonizing all of the systems, but the idea basically is that safety is such an individual experience. I can't assume that anyone feels safe in this moment. We all have different bodies, different inheritances, different life experiences. But what we can do is be brave or courageous together, and to be in conflict, experience fear and heartache, and be honest about it, or hide and then figure out how to trust and come back in, right? It's like this, and I think that that's the practice of belonging. Because if we're practicing like being safe, then, you know, it's just not true. Because safety fluctuates. You know, every moment our body is trying to figure out, am I safe? Am I safe? That sounded weird. Am I safe? Am I safe? Is this person safe? What did she just say? You know, like that's what our bodies are doing. So, you know, it's just not a guarantee and it's not a constant. But what can be constant is like coming back to presence, being brave and honest together, making mistakes, coming back again, and creating. You know?
Thank you. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah.
For our field.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's been interesting for me to travel with you. I know that you've had personal obstacles to doing this. I can't believe like what you've had to go through in terms of a major car accident, and you know, but you are a very determined person.
Yes.
And this really shows like how much you stayed with this process. And
or
as you know, when I'm looking at all of this, first I want you to talk a little bit about how did you generate these concepts?
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
where
did they come from?
where did they come from?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to start with that?
Yes, start with that.
So they came from actually the second year of CAGS. I don't remember, probably the research methodology class. I started drawing overlapping circles. Circles really are my favorite. And so I started with safety, and that's where I made the realization that it's not about safety, it's about responsibility. And then thinking about all of the different things that are related to safety and responsibility. Like that was the first like Venn diagram, right? So then came like, with safety, there's also discomfort. With safety, there's also self-regulation. With responsibility, there's co-regulation, and on and on and on. So it was kind of like this multiple Venn diagram with lots of spikes. So it came from an experiential process here, and then just amplified as I wrote about it and thought about it.
So I don't love reduction.
Yeah.
In terms of thinking or, you know, approaching almost anything, but I'm really wanting to help you or find out from you a little bit about some kind of order of priority. Like when I think about all the intersecting circles, that's one model, but what if you ranked order?
Oh boy.
You know, I'm going to challenge you here a little.
Okay.
To say, what is the most important element in all of this? What do you think really stands out from all of these things as central, you could say, or first principles of art, therapeutic art education? First, let me ask you for the five first principles.
Wow. I don't know. I think that's an interesting question. You know, it makes me wonder about like how to even frame what's important, you know, and what outcome we're looking for when I'm making this frame of what the five most important things are. But if I were, I probably would say self-regulation, participation, trust, consent, and power. I think I would say that those were the most important for me to pay attention to, because out of all of those come the rest.
Say them again.
Okay, let's see if I say the same ones.
Yeah. Maybe somebody else can remember.
Okay, self-regulation.
So the self-regulation of the teacher,
Mhm.
the teacher, okay?
Self-regulation, trust, participation, power, and impact. No, consent. Thank you.
So how is that different from any teacher, in any context?
Well, I think that, I don't know that it is.
Right.
I mean, P.S., I don't know that it is. But I do know that, like, the responsibility that therapists and health facilitators have, we speak to this, we have something to offer. Some of us use the word healers, some of us use the words wellness or coaches, but we have this thing that we say that we offer to others. And that has such an impact. We have an impact. And I think that, the ripple effect is so large. When somebody comes to me as a therapist, they're in a very vulnerable place. It's vulnerable to say, I need help. Period. It's vulnerable to talk to some stranger about all the shit. Period. So to be able to hold that vulnerability and to come from a place of like knowing I have power, I can cause harm, I have an impact, I need to ask for consent, I need to figure out what is the relationship between consent in this space. So from there, how do I support all of these therapists in being able to facilitate transformation, growth, or at least some sort of presence and like calm in one's chaotic life? Is that different? Is that maybe just being human? Perhaps so. And I think that so many fields are, we're practicing humanity. We're trying to figure out what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be in relationship? And how do we facilitate that? And so I think that those of us who are supporting students in facilitating that, we do have to hold ourselves to a higher measure, I think. I mean, and if we are, and if we can't, then don't do it. Don't do it. Same thing with being a parent. Just don't do it.
What I'm getting from you is that there's this base, there's this nest that we have to create that has to do with those 5 basic sort of first principles of relationship in a way. And then within that, we as artists educators, we add in our aesthetics and our the art making, but it has to be held by this basic kind of set of priorities.
Absolutely.
Is that what you would say?
I would say that's true. And I think, and even with that, we will cause harm. Period. Because we have power. And so how do we stay honest and authentic around our impact in a way that we can model for everybody we come in contact with, that we hold, that they can do that too. Because it's better to be like, yep, I fucked up, and how do we repair or not, than avoiding anything.
So we have to be comfortable with discomfort, comfortable and even encourage conflict, would you say? Because conflict is growth promoting if it's held properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we have
It's
to do that.
necessary. I mean, I have learned personally and professionally
Yeah.
that conflict is actually a necessary aspect of relationship. Without it, then it actually, we're missing out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to interrogate you about a little is the responsibility lies a lot with us, but I'm always struggling with what is the responsibility of the students? Great question. Like how do we responsibly get the students to take such a thing, take responsibility for yourself, and it's very hard for students to do that.
I think
How can we, or do you have some thoughts about how, as a responsible educator, you can inculcate responsibility in the student?
I mean, I think it's like what you were saying before. In part, it's the modeling, right? It's modeling authenticity and one's like emotional experience, and just really and mistakes. Like I think that the way that I facilitate is really being honest about my mistakes. I make mistakes, and if I can do that, if I can help decrease the power dynamic, I think that it offers more space for students to rise. I think it's direct communication. Hey, when you were side talking in the class, it was rude. And there's a flag right here. It was rude. So how do we? Or it had an impact. Maybe you wouldn't say it was rude. It had an impact. You're important. You're an important part of this group. You have an impact. I think that it's through conversation. It's through practice, and sometimes it's through pausing. Not all students who go through therapeutic arts education programs are going to be therapists, period. And sometimes, you go through the program and it's to just change your life. It's not to necessarily become a therapist, and that's fine, So I think it's having the gatekeeping conversations while also, it's having the vertical conversations, but also having the horizontal conversations. Right, having the conversations about how are we gatekeeping? What is my perspective right now, and how is it influencing how I see my students? Right? Is it about my understanding of what professionalism is, which is based on all of my inheritances? Is that accurate for this moment? Right? So it's how do we stay here and really reflecting on what this is, and then in communication here. I don't think that there's perfection in it. I don't think that there is really a clear answer. I think it's all practice, moment to moment. But and we all need different things. I think it also comes back to that conversation about safety. Not everybody feels safe all the time. A lot of people feel unsafe all the time. And so how do we support students in recognizing that maybe they feel unsafe all the time?
And this is part of accepting self-responsibility instead of blaming. There's a lot of blaming in this kind of education.
Well,
You're not giving me this, and you didn't make it safe for me, and this kind of thing. How to to interrupt that kind of process.
I think that's important.
It is.
I think that that's why it's important also to not assume safety or intimacy, and how to support us to really understand, we're not always going to feel safe, but that doesn't mean that we actually aren't safe. We might be actually safe, we just might be in our feelings. I think that it's just that consistent conversation, and blaming is a part of entitlement, and higher education is full of entitlement.
Right.
It's full of privilege. It's full of unearned advantage. So we come here like this a little bit and forget who the fuck we are. And I think that if we can keep talking about what our unearned advantages are, then maybe some of the blaming will, just reduce.
Oh, we could go on.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking we all want to go to bed. So we're gonna go.
Yeah.
Do you go to bed?
No. I wish. We will be back.
Okay.
Maybe it won't be that long.
Okay. Enjoy the conversation.
So, you're gonna do something with everyone?
I'll do something with